Gunther has just screwed Daniel Bryan out of finishing his story against Roman Reigns. But why? Well, on the SmackDown after WrestleMania 38, Gunther is in the ring and completely decimates his opponent in his in-ring debut. He absolutely obliterates Cedric Alexander in almost every way. It's getting hard to watch, and one man agrees as Ludwig Kaiser comes out, a former ally turned foe, or so people think, as it looks like he's gonna come down to the ring, but then he stops. Everyone looks confused as when Gunther plants Cedric with a powerbomb to pick up the win, Kaiser walks to the back. But then Gunther chucks Cedric out of the ring, and Kaiser unbelievably brings out a bloodied Bryan. No one can believe it, other than Gunther, who just laughs. Kaiser then plants him down with the ring general saying, "So all of you are wondering why I assaulted and screwed the quote-unquote greatest professional wrestler on the planet. Well, it's quite simple, although quite complicated for those who root for this swine. He cannot, I repeat, cannot hold the most prestigious championship in the world. He's unworthy of dethroning Roman Reigns. He's unworthy of calling himself the greatest professional wrestler alive, because he hasn't beaten me. And until you do, I will personally ensure that the greatest professional wrestler becomes the greatest professional loser." It's a stern warning from Gunther, and he walks up the ramp, plants Daniel Bryan with a hellacious powerbomb, and leaves the carcass behind. And with that, we don't see Daniel Bryan for months, and whilst he's gone, Gunther dominates. He defeats Ricochet the following week to become Intercontinental Champion, and proves to everyone that he may just be the best wrestler on the roster. He fights week after week, and even wins a qualifying match for Money in the Bank, with still no Daniel Bryan in sight. That is until... Daniel Bryan is at Money in the Bank, and he has just screwed the ring general. Everyone is stunned. He starts brawling at Gunther and takes him out the match. And backstage, once he gets separated by security, he screams, "You robbed me of 3 months of wrestling, and you robbed me of beating Reigns. You took everything from me, so I'll take that championship from you, then I'll go and become a triple champion when I finish my story and beat Reigns like I should have f***ing done at WrestleMania." Things are getting heated between the two athletes, and this carries over to the following SmackDown, where Daniel Bryan issues a challenge as he has a backstage segment and says, "So Gunther, you have a lackey that took me out of action, so I want him in the ring right now." And Ludwig Kaiser responds. He confronts Bryan and says, "By orders of the ring general, to ensure that this challenge is met with the best action, I will not accept your challenge this week. Because next week, when I can train to disprove you of being the best wrestler in the world, that will be when our match takes place. But it's not just a regular contest, no. Because if I win, the ring general Gunther will choose the stipulation for your match. But if you somehow win, which would never happen in a million years, you would get to choose." How does that sound? Sounds good, Kaiser. It's a huge announcement by Kaiser, which is made official later on in the show. But before then, Gunther gets his revenge. He blasts Bryan with a lariat along with a powerbomb. Bryan is softened up for Kaiser, but can the ring general's assistant succeed? Well, Bryan is clearly nowhere near 100%, and Ludwig Kaiser is dominating the match. Every time Bryan tries to come back into the match, Kaiser shuts it down. But Bryan's resilience is undeniable. He won't quit, and he eventually gets an opening and starts to fight back. And it's Bryan who starts dominating the match. He showcases that he's prepared for the ring general, and eventually he plants Kaiser with a running knee to end his suffering. And with Gunther watching on, Bryan announces the stipulation of the match. "Gunther, I know exactly what stipulation I want. The match that'll truly prove who the best professional wrestler is. It's a test of endurance on top of everything else. Gunther, our match at SummerSlam will be a 60-minute Iron Man match." An absolute bombshell has been dropped. The two best wrestlers on the planet are gonna slug it out for an hour to prove who the better professional wrestler is. And the following week, there's added stakes to the matchup, as there's a promo segment between the two ahead of their dream match with Bryan saying, "Gunther, if I can't beat you this Sunday, then fine. Not only are you the better wrestler, but I won't fight Reigns until I finally beat you. Great, even though you aren't the greatest professional wrestler, you do agree to the sanctity of this great sport, and for that I respect you. I respect your journey, but the American dream dies when I defeat you. It's another tense segment between the pair, but it doesn't go to blows until SummerSlam, and they get the main event of the show. Gunther, the reigning, defending Intercontinental Champion, against the leader of the Yes Movement, Daniel Bryan, in a 60-minute Iron Man match, with the winner at the end of the marathon holding up the Intercontinental Championship. And the match is underway, and it starts out as a technical masterclass. They trade submission holds to try and wear and tear the other down as early as possible, although neither will tap, and Bryan knows he has to pull out all the stops if he wants to call himself champion at the end of the night, so he starts diving onto Gunther like there's no tomorrow. He's trying to overwhelm the giant Austrian, but then as Bryan dives for the third time, Gunther catches him and plants him with a powerbomb onto the apron. Bryan's back is broken in half, and Gunther isn't done. He throws him into the ring and clocks him with a lariat. Will Gunther get the first fall? No! Bryan kicks out, and Gunther accepts this fact rather calmly, and then starts booting Bryan in the head, which awakens something in him. Thus the trade-off is on. Neither man will yield. They burn into warriors through sheer combat. If Gunther chops Bryan, Bryan kicks back, and eventually it spills to the outside of the ring, where the brawling escalates and escalates, to the point where Gunther redecorates the announcer's table and has evil intentions. He picks up Bryan, but he slips out, and he tries to pick up Gunther. However, his back crumbles under the pressure, and Gunther knows Bryan's weak points and targets it. He suplexes him off the announce table, then he tries to put him back on the table, but Bryan counters and puts him on the table, and Bryan has a chance to take out the ring general, and he does just that. He leaps onto Gunther, and they shatter the announce table, but they're both out cold. Neither of them are moving, and the referee counts them both out. It's still a draw, and there's still 25 minutes left of the classic, but it might go 2-2, as both men are still on the outside, but at the count of 9, both men jolt back into the ring, and the match continues. However, Bryan's back starts to get the better of him, so he has to rely on his strikes and endurance to survive Gunther's wrath. And with one chop, Gunther's sheer dominance begins in the final stage of the match. He hits a big time splash onto Bryan, and that's not enough. He locks in a half Boston Crab targeting the back, but Bryan just won't quit. Gunther even manages to connect with the most devastating lariat ever connected in pro wrestling, but that isn't enough either. Gunther is growing more and more frustrated, so he hits another splash. Bryan kicks out. Gunther can't believe Bryan is continuing to survive, so he gets desperate and unbelievably hits his own version of the running knee on Daniel Bryan, and it looks like Bryan is finished as Gunther hits a powerbomb, but Bryan kicks out at 1. And with the kick out of the century, Bryan gets a second wind. He fights and fights, and the match is coming to a close. Both men are in opposing corners. Gunther tells Bryan to fight, and Bryan flips the bird. Both men are ready. Everyone is on their feet, and they run at each other, with Bryan clocking the ring general with a knee. Time is running out. This is it. This is Bryan's last chance to get a fall. But Gunther kicks out at 1 as well. Bryan can't believe it. Then the bell rings, and there is no winner. Bryan can't believe it. He was so close to victory, yet so far. He stands in a broken mess. Then Gunther gets to his feet, grabs the Intercontinental Championship, and gets back into the ring. It's a tense moment yet again between the pair, but Gunther acknowledges Bryan, and he walks away. And with that, the show comes to a close. And if you like this story, I think this might interest you.